It's the next morning and it's about time to pour the resin. And I thought I will share my method of evaluating how much resin I'm gonna need. So first thing I do, I break the voids into simple shapes. So it's obvious that I'm gonna stick with the circle. I would say it's somewhere around 20 centimeters in diameter. And of course, then I have to determine the depth of the void, and I choose the lowest point. And it's somewhere around 3 centimeters. Then obviously I measure the rest of the voids, and in my case they are pretty similar. This step gonna involve some math, but it's gonna be very simple and I'm sure you will understand it. So first of all, I have to determine the measuring units, and I'm gonna be measuring in liters, and 1 liter equals 1 decimeter, cubic decimeter. And of course 1 decimeter equals 10 centimeters. Okay, so we know our depth, and it's 3 centimeters or 0.3 decimeters. We know our diameter, it's 20 centimeters, and that's 2 decimeters. So now we have to know a couple of simple formulas. First one is the area of the circle, and that is pi times r squared. We know that r equals half the diameter, so it ends up in 1 decimeter. Of course, pi is 3.14. So the second formula is the volume of the cylinder, and that is the area of the circle times depth or height of the cylinder. And that ends up in pi times r squared times h. So now it's just a matter of putting the numbers into equation. So this is our pi, this is our r squared, this is our depth, and this is our how many pieces we have. And it all ends up in 3.768 liters. But to be sure, I'm probably mixed 4 liters. So here I'm estimated the total volume of epoxy I'm gonna need. And now I have to determine how much of it is resin and how much of it is hardener. And it's not that hard to do because I know that this resin mixes 10 to 4, so it's pretty simple math. Quite a fascinating thing happened with these cookies. Can you see this lighter color line? I'm pretty sure this is where I applied the bead of silicone, and that implies that the epoxy got underneath the cookie and soaked throughout the grain up to the top. Isn't that crazy? Okay, let's pop this from the sheet and make them flat. I'm not gonna pretend that it's an ordinary thing to have a white belt sander next door. I'm really grateful to have a friend with such machinery. Anyway, after sanding I saw that not all of these cookies absorbed epoxy equally. There's some blank spots, so I guess I will have to coat these with more epoxy. Okay, so the next step will be to form these pieces. I need to create a circle out of each of them, and also I'm thinking to add a tiny lip around the edge. And probably the most straightforward way would be to mount it on the lathe, but I'm not a great wood turner and I don't feel very comfortable turning this thin piece, so I'm thinking to go with a router setup. So as you can see, it's pretty simple setup and it worked pretty well, though I've hit one of the screws with the router, so I should pay more attention next time. But I left a couple of pins holding the piece onto the jig, so now sanding the inside should be pretty convenient. So let's do that. I have a bit of a problem with these. Quite a few bubbles opened up here and there. Also, because of inconsistent feed rate or different material density, or just because my router bits are dull, I got a tear out in a couple of pieces. So I guess you already know where I'm going. So the plates are almost ready for the finish. The only missing part is the feet. I already went ahead and bought 3 different sized beach dowels and played with the design a bit. So I made 4 trials, and after thinking a bit, I stuck with this design. So let's make 11 more of these. The feet are in, and I would say it's about time for the finish. And I chose to go with industrial lacquer. And while you are typing in the comments that it's not food safe, I can say that your tabletop is just the same way, unless you are dining on a piece of glass. So as long as you don't cut on it or chew it, it's completely fine. Okay, let's spray some chemicals. I eat well, sleep enough, and regularly exercise. In general, I just try to keep my health and brain function at its best. But even with all this effort, sometimes my brain goes numb. When I was pouring epoxy into these cookies, I forgot to degas it, and millions of tiny bubbles got trapped. As you can see, it doesn't look too terrible. Those tiny bubbles formed some sort of clusters and created quite an interesting pattern. But in general, they just shouldn't be here. Also, I would like to explain how this yellowish line appeared into the castings. So, if you remember, the end grain soaked quite some epoxy, and once that happened, the overall levels dropped and I had to refill the castings. And matching the color at this point was basically impossible, so I didn't even try to do that. I just mixed some epoxy, dyed it yellowish, and refilled the castings. And just to summarize the build, I would say that I really like the overall design of these. I absolutely love how the feet turned out, yet I don't really think those tiny bubbles were necessary in the epoxy. But that's just my opinion. And the looks of it is absolutely subjective, so my opinion means nothing in this case. Anyway, thank you for being with me, and I hope to see you on the next video. Bye bye!